In 1965, a map was unveiled that shook the academic world, a medieval parchment showing a landmass in the Western Ocean labeled Vinland, drawn more than 50 years before Columbus set sail. Yale University's 1965 publication of the map sent a global shockwave through archaeology, history, and cartography, because if genuine, it would rewrite everything the Western world believed about the discovery of America. The map's annotation describes Vinland as a great island in the Western Sea, discovered by Bjarni and Leif Eriksson on a voyage from Greenland, sailing in company with Bishop Eirik of Greenland. The Norse sagas had long told of Vinland, a land of wild grapes and tall timber west of Greenland, reached by Viking seafarers around the year 1000 AD, 5 centuries before Columbus. Leif Eriksson, son of Eric the Red, is named in the sagas as the first European to set foot on North American soil, called Vinland, believed to be somewhere on the Canadian coast. In 1960, Norwegian explorer Helge Ingstad discovered the remains of a Norse settlement at Lonso Meadows in Newfoundland, undeniable proof that Vikings had indeed reached North America around 1000 AD. The archaeological finds at Lonso Meadows, Norse iron nails, a bronze pin, a spindle whorl, confirmed European presence in North America 5 centuries before Columbus, without any reference to the Vinland Map. But the Vinland Map itself has never been proven genuine, and the debate over whether its ink is medieval or modern has consumed 5 decades of scientific investigation, producing contradictory results. The Vinland Map sits at the intersection of medieval scholarship and modern forensic science. Every new analytical technique brought to bear has produced new controversy rather than resolution. In 1974, chemist Walter Macrone announced that the map's ink contained anatase, a titanium compound not produced commercially until the 1920s, suggesting the map was a 20th century forgery. Macrone's announcement seemed to end the debate, but it was only the beginning of a scientific and academic war that continues to this day. The Vinland Map sits in Yale's Benecke Library, neither proven genuine nor conclusively exposed as a forgery, one of the most consequential unsolved mysteries in cartographic history. Radiocarbon dating of the parchment itself, as opposed to the ink, produced a result consistent with the mid-15th century, which aligned with the claimed medieval date of the map. The medieval parchment date proved nothing about the ink. A sophisticated forger could have obtained genuine 15th century vellum and written on it with modern ink, creating a scientifically ambiguous document. Walter Macrone's laboratory analysis identified anatase, a synthetic form of titanium dioxide, in the map's ink, a compound he argued could only have been manufactured commercially after 1917. The anatase crystals Macrone found were uniformly spherical, a shape associated with industrial synthetic production, rather than the irregular crystals that occur naturally in medieval ink preparations. In 2002, a team from the University of Arizona applied a more advanced technique, particle-induced X-ray emission analysis, and produced a finding that reopened the debate completely. The Arizona team found that the ratio of titanium to manganese in the ink was consistent with natural, medieval-era ink preparation, and that anatase in small quantities can occur naturally in medieval manuscripts. The scientific community divided, Macrone's supporters maintaining that the anatase proved forgery, the Arizona team arguing that natural anatase in medieval manuscripts had been documented elsewhere. Some aspects of the map's ink are consistent with medieval preparation, while others remain difficult to explain without reference to modern production methods. The science has not resolved the question, it has deepened it. Paleographic analysis of the map's text, the style of the Latin script, the letter formations, proved more favorable to authenticity, with the handwriting consistent with 15th century scribal practice. The map's wormholes align precisely with 2 accompanying medieval documents, suggesting genuine centuries-long binding, a level of forgery sophistication that would have been extraordinarily difficult to achieve. If the Vinland Map is a forgery, it is the most sophisticated document forgery in history, requiring expertise in medieval paleography, cartographic history, chemistry, and access to genuine 15th century parchment. Some researchers have suggested the map may have been created by Joseph Fisher, a Jesuit priest and cartographic scholar who had both the expertise and the access, though this remains unproven and disputed. In 2021, a team from the University of Copenhagen applied hyperspectral imaging to the Vinland Map, producing what they called the most comprehensive chemical analysis of the document ever conducted. The Copenhagen analysis declared the map almost certainly a forgery, but immediately other scholars challenged the methodology, arguing that the reference medieval inks used for comparison were not representative. Peer-reviewed scientific journals have published both sides of the Vinland Map debate, with genuine experts citing genuine evidence reaching opposite conclusions, an almost unprecedented situation in documentary science. The Vinland Map has consumed decades of scientific careers and produced an enormous body of contradictory literature, the map itself remaining stubbornly ambiguous under every instrument applied to it. Whether or not the Vinland Map is genuine, two 13th-century Icelandic sagas provide independent literary evidence for Norse voyages to North America, the Grenlandinga saga and the Eriks saga, Rauda. The Grenlandinga saga records Bjarni Herjolfsson sighting an unknown wooded coast around 986 AD, refusing to land, sailing on, but bringing back the knowledge that land existed to the west. Leif Eriksson followed Bjarni's reported route around 1000 AD, naming 3 lands along the way: Helluland, probably Baffin Island, Markland, probably Labrador, and Vinland, where he wintered. The sagas describe Vinland as a place of wild grapes, tall timber, and abundant salmon. Geographic details that have led scholars to place Vinland as far south as New England and as far north as Newfoundland. The sagas describe initial trading with the local peoples, called Skrælings, that deteriorated into violence, ultimately forcing the Norse to abandon their Vinland settlement after only a few years. In Vinland, around 1005 AD, Gudrid Thorbjarnardóttir gave birth to a son named Snorri, the first European child born in the Americas, recorded in the Icelandic sagas. The Norse abandoned Vinland after conflicts with indigenous peoples and internal disputes, leaving North America to its inhabitants for 5 more centuries until Columbus's voyages began the permanent European colonization. Lanso Meadows, excavated by Helga Ingstad and Anne Stein Ingstad from 1960 onwards, is the only confirmed Norse site in North America, and it proved that the saga accounts of Vinland were not legend but history. The artifacts at Lanso Meadows include a Norse-style iron forge, a bronze pin of Scandinavian type, and a spindle whorl, objects with no plausible origin except a Norse settlement around 1000 AD. New research continues to reveal the extent of Norse activity in North America. Bayberry-infused beeswax of Norse origin found at multiple sites suggests the Norse exploration was more widespread than a single settlement at Lanso Meadows. Norse navigation technology, latitude sailing using the pole star, solar compasses, and detailed oral knowledge of ocean conditions, made regular transatlantic crossings to Greenland and beyond a practical reality for experienced Norse mariners. The Norse didn't make a single dramatic voyage to Vinland. The archaeological and written evidence points to regular seasonal expeditions to North America for timber and other resources over several decades. Satellite archaeology has identified possible additional Norse sites in Newfoundland, suggesting that Lanso Meadows may be just one node in a larger Norse presence that archaeologists are still working to map. Indigenous oral traditions from communities along the northeastern coast of North America preserve accounts of encounters with pale, boat-borne strangers, stories that may preserve memory of the Norse from 1,000 years ago. The irony of the Vinland Map controversy is that the Norse discovery of America doesn't require the map to be genuine. Lanso Meadows already proved it. The sagas already described it, and new archaeology continues to confirm it. Columbus's famous 1492 voyage reached the Americas nearly 5 centuries after Leif Eriksson, a fact now established beyond any serious scholarly doubt by the physical archaeology of Lanso Meadows. The Vinland Map depicts Greenland as an island with a geographic accuracy that medieval European cartographers should not have possessed, raising the question of how a forger would have known Greenland's shape before modern surveys confirmed it. Comparison with satellite imagery shows the Vinland Map's Greenland to be remarkably accurate, knowledge that could only have come from Norse Greenland settlers who had explored the island's full coastline. The Vinland landmass on the map has been compared against the North American coast in dozens of academic studies. with no consensus on what specific region is depicted, if any real coastline was the source. The Vinland maps Europe and Asia show typical medieval cartographic distortions, but the North Atlantic section is anomalously accurate, suggesting it was drawn from a different and more reliable source than the continental section. The map's inscription identifies it as copied around the time of the Council of Basel, a major ecclesiastical gathering that brought scholars from across Europe, potentially including those with access to Norse geographical knowledge. The Vinland map was found bound with two confirmed medieval documents, the Speculum Historiale and a Tartar relation, with wormholes that align across all three, suggesting the map was genuinely bound with these texts for centuries. The Vinland map's provenance before 1957 is unknown. It appeared in the hands of a European book dealer without documented history, a gap that has always been one of the strongest arguments for suspecting forgery. Lawrence Whitten, the antiquarian book dealer who acquired the map, sold it to Yale through Lawrence Rockefeller's funding, a transaction that gave the map institutional respectability while its origins remained obscure. The history of scholarly forgeries, from Piltdown Man to the Hitler Diaries, shows that institutional investment in an artifact's authenticity can delay exposure of fraud by decades, regardless of emerging counter-evidence. History also offers the reverse. Legitimate documents initially dismissed as forgeries, later verified, suggesting that the presumption of forgery can be as epistemically dangerous as the presumption of authenticity. The Vinland map matters to people because a medieval map showing Vinland would be visual, institutional, cartographic proof, a different kind of authority than the written sagas, reaching audiences that literary accounts cannot. The Vinland map carries cultural and political weight beyond the academic. For Norway, Iceland, and the broader Norse diaspora, its authenticity would mean official historical recognition of their ancestors' achievement. The Columbus narrative is deeply embedded in Western culture, and the Vinland map's challenge to it is not merely academic. It implicates Columbus Day, the naming of America, the mythology of European discovery that shaped colonial ideology. The entire "Who Discovered America First" debate is a European conversation. The Americas had been discovered, settled, and civilized for 15,000 years before any European ship appeared on the horizon. The Vinland map's annotation briefly mentions the Skraelings, the indigenous peoples the Norse encountered, in passing, as an obstacle rather than a civilization, reflecting the documentary blind spot at the center of the European discovery narrative. Whatever the Vinland map is, genuine relic or sophisticated forgery, it has generated more scientific analysis and cultural debate than any other single document in cartographic history. The Norse achievement that the Vinland map would commemorate, transatlantic voyaging in open longships, across seas with no charts and no knowledge of what lay beyond, remains extraordinary regardless of any single document's authenticity. The longship itself is perhaps the most important proof of Norse capability. A vessel that could cross the North Atlantic, navigate coastal waters, and be carried overland, giving Norse explorers access to more of the world's surface than any other medieval people. The Norse maintained settlements in Greenland for nearly 5 centuries, a permanent presence in the western Atlantic from which regular voyages to Labrador for timber, walrus ivory, and other resources were a practical routine. The Norse discovered America and then, essentially, forgot about it because the discovery had nowhere useful to go. The settlements were abandoned, the sagas preserved the memory, and Europe had no context for understanding what lay across the Atlantic. Columbus's 1492 voyage mattered not because it was the first, it wasn't, but because Europe in 1492 had the economic power, the demographic pressure, and the navigational capability to follow up the discovery with permanent colonization. Genetic studies have found traces of European ancestry in pre-Columbian indigenous North American populations, raising the possibility that Norse contact with North America was more extensive and intimate than the written sagas record. The Maine penny, a Norwegian coin from 1065-80 AD found in an indigenous site in Maine, provides direct evidence that Norse material culture reached deep into New England through indigenous trade networks, 5 centuries before Columbus. The Vinland map remains at Yale, remains the subject of active scientific investigation, and remains, after 60 years of study, the most ambiguous document in the history of cartography. A definitive answer about the Vinland Map would require either an unambiguous provenance trail or a chemical signature that all analytical methods agree is medieval or modern, and neither has yet emerged. The Vinland Map controversy is ultimately about how official history is made, who decides what counts as proof, whose claims are taken seriously, and how long institutional narratives resist the evidence that challenges them. New generations of archaeologists are still searching for additional Norse sites in North America, and given the pattern of discoveries since 1960, it is unlikely that L'Anse aux Meadows is the only one. Beyond the Vinland Map, a range of disputed Norse artifacts, the Kensington runestone, the Newport Tower, various runestones in North America, suggest that the debate about Norse America extends far beyond one piece of parchment. The United States established Leif Eriksson Day as a federal observance in 1964, the year before the Vinland Map was published, recognizing Norse priority in reaching America on the basis of the sagas and archaeology alone. The Norse discovery of America is proven by L'Anse aux Meadows and the sagas. The Vinland Map, if genuine, adds a visual dimension to that proof, but changes nothing about the historical reality. The North Atlantic is the ocean that connects North America to Europe, and its full history of crossings, from Viking longships to Columbus's caravels, is a story that no single map can contain. The sagas have been passed down through Icelandic families for 1,000 years, the living literary tradition of a people who knew their ancestors had reached America and needed no official map to remember it. Future analytical techniques, and potentially undiscovered documents that might provide the map's missing provenance, may yet resolve the debate one way or the other, though every previous definitive analysis has produced new controversy. The map's text, whether written in the 15th century or the 20th, describes something that actually happened. Norse explorers reached North America centuries before Columbus, and a medieval church official knew about it. The Vinland Map will continue to be studied, debated, and contested, because the question it raises is too important to let go. Do we have medieval cartographic evidence of Norse discovery, and what does our desperate desire to answer that question reveal about us? Whether or not the Vinland Map is genuine, the Norse crossed the North Atlantic in longships 1,000 years ago. And the question it leaves us with is this: what else do we know happened that official history has still not admitted? Tell us your answer in the comments.